welcome to Crime in Court. This is the Delphi trial transcript that we are reading through today, Indiana versus Richard Allen in the homicides of Libby German and Abby Williams, and we are on the state's case part 18 in the middle of First Sergeant what's his name? First Sergeant Christopher Cecil. Remembered his title, just not his name. He's with the Indiana State Police, and he is the individual who did the data extract from Libby's iPhone 6. So he is discussing and talking about all of the things that he found on her phone, and I had to leave kind of abruptly in the middle of his testimony, unfortunately, last time because I had physical therapy. So, I had to cut him off. I wanted to go a little longer on him, but I'm back and we are going to finish his testimony today. So, let's get started. Please hit the like button and let's go. All right, so we left off right here. He was talking about health app data and things like that. So he says, "What about when the health app?" This is McClelland asking the questions for the state. What about when the health app data when the phone is writing in a car? Did you gather information about that? From research that was done by the Netherlands Forensic Institute, which is part of the Hague, they said that an iPhone could mistakenly interpret a car driving over a speed bump as a step. So a speed bump could be misconstrued by the Apple Health app that it's a step. I find that iffy. In order for that to happen from your research, what would have to happen to the phone? The phone would have to be in the car and on and just in the car. Would it have to move in some fashion? Well, the car would have to be moving. But would the phone, would it have to be moving? No, in some fashion. No. Okay, I want to move on to the chart that you have. It is more expansive than the one in the first report. Why is it more expansive? I took it back a little earlier into the morning of when, earlier in the day, because I took it back to like around like almost 11 a.m. in the morning on February 13th, 2017. Sorry, I had to pause there for a second and I totally lost my place. And I didn't highlight where I left off, which usually I do, and I've forgot to do that. So I'm going to back up just a smidge because I don't know. Well, I may be backing up. I'm not sure if I read this or not. Mr. McLeland says, okay, I want to move on to the chart that you have. It is more expansive than the one in the first report. Why is it more expansive? I took it back a little earlier into the morning of when, earlier in the day, because I took it back to like around like almost 11 a.m. in the morning on February 13th, 2017. Why did you do that? Try to show a little bit of a pattern of what the phone is doing, what would be maybe considered its norm. Now, does the health app data give you longitude and latitude or any kind of location data? No. Are there other applications within a phone that will give you a location data? Yes. How is it determined which application within a phone will give you the location data? Can you repeat that? Sure. Which applications within a phone will give you location data, meaning longitude and latitude? Whatever application you have designated to have assigned to location services. So the user of the phone has to he sounds so dumb acting like a moron. So the user of the phone has to manually turn on those various applications to register longitude and latitude or some kind of location data? Right. Like most people don't know this. Whatever. Okay, specifically, in this iPhone, do you recall which applications Libby had the location? This is going to be a bad question. Which applications within the phone had the location data turned on? Yes. Can you tell me which applications those were? So for location services were enabled for while using the application would have been the App Store, Camera, Goodrich, Maps, Photos, Safari, Siri, and Snapchat. Always enabled for weather and never enabled for Walmart. And those applications are listed on the bottom of page 10. That's all the apps she had on her phone? I doubt that. And those applications are listed on the bottom of page 10 of your report. Is that correct? Right. And you also have a picture there in your report on page 10. What is that a picture of? That's a picture of the enabled applications from Libby's iPhone. Well, tell me a little bit about how those applications are able to register GPS location. What do they use to register that? It's using the phone. It's connecting to the GPS network to generate a GPS coordinate, or it could be utilizing cell towers. It could be utilizing Wi-Fi. So it depends on what degree of accuracy the application needs to be able to pinpoint where you are. Let's talk about that accuracy. How accurate is the GPS location for these various applications? For GPS, it's really good. Very, very good. That brings me to page 11 of your report. What does page 11 of your report talk about? So, this talks about the video that Libby captured on her iPhone. It's the video of Abby coming across the bridge and then the person walking behind her. And when is this captured? This video is captured at 2:13:51 on February 13th of 17. And looking at your report, when the video is initiated, when the video starts, where is the GPS location? The GPS location goes out near Delphi High School. That makes no sense. And is that area marked on the map with your report? Yes. Talk about that second picture in your report. What happens as the video records? Okay, so first off, there is an error in that on this page of the report, there's two errors. What are the two errors? The first error at the very, very top upper right corner, you'll see where it says 14:31:55. That should be 14:13:55. So I just flipped the 1 and the 3. Is that typo on your part? Yes. Okay, so it should say approximately 4 seconds later after the video starts, 14:13:55. Okay. And then what was the other correction? The other one would be in the second start of the table there. It should read 14:13:55. Again, a typo on your part? Yes. So explain to the jury the GPS location on the video when it starts that you've testified to. Uh, I just want to back up and say, is that a typo or is that what they call a scrivener's error, the 14:13:55 versus 14:31:55? I don't know. Seems easy enough. It does seem like, you could just transpose the numbers on accident, but twice? I don't know. It makes me wonder a little bit. All right. So next, explain what happens to the GPS location as the video progresses. So when the video starts, the GPS with the metadata, the lat and long, that's embedded into it immediately goes out to where right around the near Delphi High School. Within 4 seconds, it comes back and it's on the trail, and it has a 30-meter horizontal degree of accuracy within a circle. So it brings it back to the trail. So what's happening is when the camera is first being used, it's using something, it's low accuracy. So it's not wanting to use a whole lot of battery power. This is what Apple encourages its application developers to do. Try not to use a whole lot of battery power because we want our customers to be able to enjoy the product. So, when it's recording a video, it initially goes out, likely capturing the cell phone tower data to try to pinpoint where it is. There's no Wi Fi out there. To my knowledge, out there on the trail, we're out in the middle of the woods, so it's utilizing the cell towers to kind of triangulate, determine where it is. But as the video is recording, it's like it actually utilizes the satellites to provide a more accurate location of where the video really is, and utilizing the satellites causes it to use a little more power. So, why was it like totally off to start with? That makes no sense to me. Unless maybe she last used her Snapchat at the high school, maybe. I don't know. And that was the last location that it used. I mean, I have questions about this. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Hmm. I don't know. Why is it at the Delphi High School? All right, this bothers me. So I just looked it up, and we've got Monon Trail. The Monon High Bridge Trail is over here. You can see if we zoom in on this is Google Maps. This is the Monon High Trail, and Freedom Bridge is here. I can't seem this map does not show Monon High Bridge itself, which this might be one of those things where, a high profile crime like this happens and then Google Maps takes it off the map. So I don't know. But Freedom Bridge is right there. And if you look, um, the high school is 6 minutes or 2.5 miles away. So 2.5 miles away, and your GPS first shows you 2.5 miles away, and then I don't buy this. I don't buy this. This makes no sense to me. But you guys, let me know in the comments below if you buy it. What do you think of this excuse or this reasoning as to why maybe it was the high school first and now it's the bridge, the trail? I don't know. Where did I leave off now? Okay, sorry, I read all that. So when the video starts, this is the longitude and latitude that it produces. Longitude, latitude, and the elevation. Does it give you a range of accuracy when the video first starts? No. And then within the 4 seconds, the long and latitude changes? Yes. And does it give you a range of accuracy when it changes? Yes. Well, how do you know the girls didn't just go from here to here in 4 seconds? I would think that would be kind of impossible. Nick McClelland is a moron. How do you know the girls didn't just go from here to here in 4 seconds? Yeah, they just magically teleported from the Delphi High School to the trail in 4 seconds. I really do not like Nick McClelland. Anyways, what's the distance between here and here? I do not know. Is it more than a mile? I don't know. You also were able to view the video that was found on the phone, is that correct? Yes. What you viewed on the video, does it match the long and lat of what was found? It puts it in the area. So that's a yes or no. It puts it in the area. of the area of the long and lat of the 4 seconds that the video is running? Yes. I want to move on to your report. And in your report, I want to move on to the Snapchat application. Did you have an opportunity to examine the information within Snapchat on your second report? I did. And can you tell me what you found? So, this is a database that it's utilized for cataloging. And we got our first inaudible 15 minutes in. So this is a database that it's utilized in cataloging to the satellites, basically GPS information, and I was able to attribute that data to someone utilizing Snapchat on the phone. And did Libby have the location data on Snapchat turned on? She did. And what does this chart on the bottom of page 12 start at page 13? What does that show? These show the lat and long of when Snapchat's being used and when it's in the foreground of the phone. And it's giving you a horizontal precision of 5 meters, so it's not exactly where the phone was or where Libby or Abby were. They're within a 5 meter circle. Now, why is it? Why doesn't the latitude and longitude just run? She's got it turned on Snapchat. Why doesn't it just run constantly? Because it would run continuously. It would run the battery down. And again, Apple doesn't want its developers running the battery down like that unless for something like for mapping. And so, is it fair to say from your report, Snapchat only logs the long and lat of what times? At intervals when the application's being used. So she has to have the application open? Yes. Okay. I want to move on to your to the battery powered part of your report, the bottom of page 14. Your first report, you said the phone died or lost power around 10 a.m. on the 13th. What did you find in your second analysis? The battery of an iPhone is very complex, and the operating system of the iPhone has some power management where once it gets below 20%, it does a lot of throttling because it's trying to stay connected to the network. It's trying to do things to so the user can still try to use the device. So once it gets around 20%, you'll get an alert, a notification on your phone that says, hey, you might want to put this in low power mode. If you don't and you keep using it, then the power's going to significantly decrease. And then right around 10%, it's going to give you another notification. It's like, "Hey, you're at 10%. Do you want to put your phone in a low power mode?" So, when your phone is getting down to when it's been throttled and it's in low power mode, what's happening is the CPU, the processor inside the phone starts slowing down. So, if you unlock the phone, it may quickly lock back real quick as opposed to having that delay that maybe you originally had set into it to lock. The screen's going to dim. Games or anything that you might want to play, any applications may be slow to open because it's trying to preserve as much power as it can to allocate to other things that are more important, like receiving phone calls, getting text messages. Applications in the background won't refresh, but your triaxle, accelerometer, your gyroscope, all of those things are still going to work on your phone. You're still going to be able to use Apple Pay. So if you've got your phone, you're in low power mode and you want to go up and buy something at the gas station, you'll still be able to do that. Location accuracy, it doesn't affect that. It doesn't affect your cell phone call quality. It doesn't affect the quality of the pictures that you're capturing with it. And so you might have said this and I might have missed it. You said the low battery, it doesn't affect, or does it affect the health app tracking data? No, it doesn't. So if you get the low battery, Is your health app going to shut off and say, okay, we're not tracking data anymore because that takes too much power? Is that going to happen? No. Initially, you said the phone shut off around 10 o'clock on the 13th. With this new analysis, what were you able to determine? I believe the phone at least stayed on past up until or after around 4:30 in the morning on February 14th. And how did you come to that conclusion? So, I'm looking at other data that is going on the phone. The phone received a bunch of text messages right around 4:30 in the morning on February 14th, a bunch of SMS test messages. And does the phone have to be on to receive those? Yes. Did you see any indication that the phone was turned off between the time the video was taken on February 13th and the time that the SMS messages came in at 4:30 a.m. on the 14th? No. From the time that the movement stopped at 2:32 p.m. until the time the text messages came in at 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, did you gather any information to show that the phone turned off? No. From the time the phone stopped moving at 2:32 p.m. on February 13th to 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, did I say that right? The 13th to 14th? Was there any movement tracked in the phone? No. The last part of your report, tell the jury what the last part of your report displays. This is another timeline where I'm focusing on events after the phone had stopped moving. Now, does this timeline cover all the events that are covered in the timeline? Does this timeline cover all the events that are covered in the timeline in the first report? I'm just pointing out the words that he used to ask that question. He says a few of those, a few. Where does this timeline start? This one starts at 2:33 p.m. on February 13th. Where did your last timeline start for your first report? Right around, like, I think it started at 1:38:49 p.m. Your timeline in your first report starts before this one? Yes. And there is some overlap? Yes. And this report or this timeline, what does it display in addition to the timeline in your first report? So besides the screens lighting up and dimming down and the battery power, I actually add some information about SMS messages, phone calls it receives, FaceTime or FaceTime video calls that the phone receives. And so during this time, is the phone receiving FaceTime calls? Yes. Is the phone receiving phone calls? Yes. What about messages? Yes. What is an SMS message? Short message service. So this is going to be a message that would go over the cellular network as opposed to the data side, the internet side. And so I want to draw your attention to February 13th, 2106. Are you there in your report? 216 UTC? Yes. Okay. Can you convert the time for me, please? So that would be 4:06 p.m. on February 13th. And what happens in the phone at 4:46 p.m. on the 13th? It receives an SMS message. From who? From Becky, Marchand, Patty. Marchand, I don't know. And what does the message say? You need to call me now. And multiple exclamation points. Okay, okay. And that's at 4:06 p.m. on the 13th. Is that correct? Yes. Are there additional calls and SMS messages that come in after that? Yes. In the following pages of your report, did it document those phone calls and SMS messages? It does. Does it give you the time and the date and when those phone calls and messages came into the phone? Yes. Does it also give you a phone number of who's calling or sending those messages? Yes. And when it has a name like Tate or like Becky, Marsha, and Patty, where is the phone collecting that name from, or how is the phone getting that name? It's pulling that from a database, so it'll be a call history database. And if there's a name saved in there, would that mean that the user has that phone number saved under the name in that phone, under that name in their phone? Correct. So if you have it labeled as mom or grandma or whatever, then that's how it's going to come up in the directory, the database that they're pulling from. And do these phone calls and messages progress into February 14th? The messages do. And then there are several messages that come in at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. Is that correct? Yes. Can you explain why there's a lull, meaning why there's messages coming in and then there's a big gap of time, and then at 4:33 a.m. I think there's 15 to 20 different messages that all come in at once. Can you explain that? Yes, please. Can you explain that? Let's see what his explanation is. Based on the data I have here, I don't know. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Could it be that the phone was moved, perhaps? I don't know. Maybe it was off or out of range of the network and then brought back to that location or turned on at a certain time. I don't know. But I definitely know that there are things about the data for this phone that don't make sense. I want to move down the end of the chart in your report, and it's going to be page 25 of your report, drawing your attention to February 14th at 4:34 a.m. Is that the last activity that you see in your report that occurs on February 14th? Last activity that the operating system's doing? Yes. What happens after that? I'm not sure. He's not sure. So the last activity is on the 14th at 4:34 a.m. After that, he doesn't know what's going on. At some point, when it says the iPhone booted up, what does that mean? That the iPhone's powering on. And when does that happen? It happens at 3:06 p.m. on February 15th. So the day after the girls were found, I can't remember who, Bunner, Lieutenant Bunner, said that he was the one that powered it on. And do you have an explanation of why the phone was turning on at that date and time? Sometime between 4:34 a.m. on February 14th, and that time is it lost power. And do you know how it gained power on February 15th of 2017? That would be Lieutenant Brian Bunner charging it to prepare it for an examination. So at some point at after 4:33 a.m. on the 14th, it loses power and does not turn back on until Lieutenant Bunner has the phone. Is that accurate? Yes. Judge, I don't have any other questions. Thank you. The court says, do we need a break or anything? Do you guys need a break? Yes. All right. We'll go ahead and take our break between direct and cross. While you're outside the courtroom, please keep your minds open. Don't form any opinions or anything about anything. You can talk about the evidence, but please only do that if you're all present in the room at the same time, and then please don't deliberate. Gentlemen, the bailiff says, all rise. The jury leaves the courtroom. Court says, all right, let's take until about 3:40. And if you just wait until the jury gets back until the jury room, the bailiff will let you out here in a few minutes. Thank you. Jody, you can go off the record. Well, guys, that sucked. So, apologies for the interjection in between parts here. So I recorded the first part of this episode was ready to go for, a Friday night or episode for you guys. It was being recorded well in advance. And then my second screen on my computer decided to not work anymore. The connections just the cords just didn't work. Like I would plug it in, it would be like, "Oh, okay, you're there." Nope, you're not. So it was just not recognizing my second screen. All of a sudden, it was just random, and so that sucked. So now I'm back for this recording the second part of this. I look different, my hair is different, my it's several days later, so I apologize, apologies. That was unforeseen, and I obviously can't record without the second screen because I'm using one screen for my streaming stuff and then one screen to read off of. So it was a crazy weekend too, cause trying to get all my stuff set back up, and then we also had construction going on this week, and it was loud. So even if I wanted to record, there wasn't any quiet time to record really. My boyfriend is always doing like projects around the house. This just happened to be a loud construction project that I couldn't do anything about. So anywho, we're back, and this is the second part of part 18. Now I look different. Just I like to keep, video continuity going, but I had to address that. So, all right, I'm back. Let's continue where I left off. I think I had to leave for physical therapy or something. Can't remember exactly, but I had to stop. So I am back, and we're gonna keep going where we left off. So we just went off the record. Pardon me, I'm discombobulated since it's been several days, so I don't remember where we left off. So this is more for me than you guys. So we took a break. First Sergeant Cecil, Christopher Cecil, on the stand. We took a quick break. They went off the record. They needed a break in the middle of testimony, and or were we done with questioning? This was direct examination. Yeah, so we're going on to cross now. So okay, so no, we're continuing direct examination. Never mind. I lied. So direct is continued. It looked like they were moving on because I saw the court asking Ms. Auger. So that was who's a defense attorney. So I thought she was asking Ms. Auger if she was ready to cross-examine, but she's not. What did I do with my pen now? Oh my God, I feel like so uncoordinated here. Not or unprepared. I lost my pen. Hold on. All right. Sorry about that. Let's continue. So we're back on the record for this day, whatever day this is. I don't know because it doesn't, I'd have to like scroll all the way back up and try to find it. So I'm not going by days, I'm just going by witnesses. So whatever day this is, we're at the end of the day. This is the last portion of the day. We just came back from break. So the court says, okay, Ms. Auger, are you ready? Ms. Auger says, yes, Your Honor, thank you. Court says, okay. Mr. McClellan says, Judge, could I ask the court permission to leave to ask a few omitted questions before Ms. Auger goes? I have 4 admitted questions, and I want to ask leave to request that prior to the jury coming in. Court says, okay, are you okay with that? We'll just push you back a little bit. Okay, sure. Mr. McClellan says, okay. Did the defense answer? Because we don't have that on the record. Mr. McClellan says, okay. The court says, okay. Mr. McClellan says, thank you, Judge. Court says, you're welcome. All rise, says the bailiff. The jury comes in at 3:48 in the afternoon. The bailiff says, thank you. You may be seated. Court says, thank you, gentlemen. All right, Mr. McClellan, you indicated before the jury came in, you had a couple of omitted questions that you would like permission to ask. So he forgot. Omitted means left out. He forgot to ask these questions during his direct. So this is a continuation of direct examination. So that's why I was confused. Okay. So Mr. McClellan says, yes, Your Honor, if the court would allow me to ask those questions at this time. Court says you may. First, Sergeant Cecil. I forgot to clear up a few things with you, and I want to take the opportunity and do that now. Questions I said I would come back to, and I that I just omitted. And so I'm going to draw your attention to your first report, and I'm going to show you and hand you what's been. Sorry, that you guys don't need to see my bookmarks. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as States Exhibit 225, and I'm going to draw your attention to page 10 of that report. And there's a portion of that report I wanted to clear up for the jury because it may be confusing. I want to draw your attention to 213 of 2017 at 14:07:10. That's 2:07. Are you there in your report? Yes. Oh, what I forgot to ask, are there two asterisks by those two entries in that report? And I never got to ask you, what do those asterisks mean? So if you go to page 11, I indicate what those asterisks mean in my report. Can you tell the jury what they mean? So I'm referring to an uploaded still image to Snapchat depicting Abby Williams walking across the Monon High Bridge, and I didn't find it in the Snapchat database, and I didn't find the picture on her device. This and the auxiliary plug in and out are like two of the most um underrated pieces of evidence, I think, in this case that really drive home the fact that there's something fishy here. Let me read that again. I'm referring to the uploaded still image to Snapchat depicting Abby Williams walking across Monon High Bridge. So that picture, that famous picture we've all seen of Abby walking across the bridge in her pink little tank top and gray sweatshirt, jeans, Converse, with her hair in a ponytail, and she's walking the bridge looking down. That famous picture. You guys remember it now that I described it to you. He's saying this picture wasn't in her Snapchat database and it wasn't on Libby's device. How the hell did that picture get taken, posted, uploaded to Snapchat, any of that? If it's not on her device and it's not in the Snapchat database, and it's not like it was just deleted from it, it's just it wasn't there. So where'd that come from? What is that? Why was that picture uploaded to Libby's Snapchat? Like this piece of evidence drives me crazy that people don't talk about this. This picture of Abby on the bridge was uploaded to Snapchat. Could have been possibly uploaded by a cloud, by an iPad, by something else, not Libby's phone. It wasn't on Libby's phone. I think that is something that needs to be emphasized more and more. All right, let's move on. Any explanation of why you didn't find that picture on her device, but you found the other pictures? I don't know. So there's no explanation. He does not know why that would be. I could think of some reasons, but it's not going to help the state. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 226. Can you identify that, please? This is a picture that I found on the internet that depicts what I'm referencing. Now, the date and time on that, was that on there when you found it, or did you put that on there? It was on there when I found it on the internet. And that time and date coincide. Does that time and date coincide with the entry on your report? That's what I'm relating it to. Okay. And do you believe this is a picture that was posted on Snapchat at the time? I believe it is. So he testifies he believes it was posted on Snapchat, but it's not on Libby's phone or Snapchat database on her phone. Okay? Just weird, right? Weird. Mr. McClellan says, Judge, the state would move to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibit 226. State's Exhibit 226 was offered. No objection. The court says, all right. Without objection, it's admitted. Mr. McClellan wants to publish it to the jury, and the court says you may. All right, next question. The next clarification for Sergeant Cecil I want to clear up for the jury is you and I, in your first report, talked about whether or not you were able to find a measurement for the information in the health application as it applies to the elevation change. Do you recall talking about that in your first report? Yes. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 227 and draw your attention to page 7 of that report. I told the jury that we would talk about this in your report, and I omitted the question. Were you able to find information in your second analysis that gives the jury an idea of the distance measured or the amount of distance that equals 2 floors? Yes. Can you tell the jury that, please? So somehow there was an elevation of 2 floors, and he's going to try to explain it. Can you tell the jury that, please? He says, so this is from Selbright. Selbright says that a flight of stairs is counted as approximately 10 feet or 3 meters of elevation gain. So they're saying it's approximately 16 steps. And so if in this case, with 2 floors being traveled approximately 20 feet, is that correct? Yes. And then I want to finally, the last area I want to clear up. I want to draw the attention to the next page of the report. That didn't I want to back up. Whatever his explanation was as to why the elevation gain, that really didn't explain it. It just says that they traveled 20 feet. But how did you get the elevation gain? Nobody told us that. That wasn't explained. All right, moving on. He says on that report, page 8, and this is a table of the health app data that you gathered that's more extensive as opposed to your first report. Is that correct? Yes. And I mean to draw your attention to 2/13/2017, the entry that begins at 12:01 p.m. Are you there? Yes. And it looks like after the entry, it and it looks like after that entry, when does the next entry start? It's a weird way to word it. The witness says at 1:31:40 p.m. And so what does that mean? From 12:01 to 1:31, is the phone moving during that time? No. And then after 1:30, it begins to move again. Is that correct? Yes. I don't have any other questions, Judge. Thank you. Ms. Auger? Ms. Auger says, yes, Your Honor, thank you. With permission, the court says yes. Ms. Auger says, thank you, sorry. Mr. McClellan says, Ms. Auger, do you want these up? She says, I don't think so. Mr. McClellan says, okay, so he must have been talking about the exhibits. Now we're going to begin cross-examination of the witness. Ms. Auger, for the defense, asks, alrighty. First, Sergeant Cecil, I want to follow up first on this exhibit 226. Yes. You found this on the internet? Yes. Where? I believe I found it on Google. Do you remember what you searched to find it? No, ma'am. So this is not a proper chain of custody, just pointing out you need a proper chain of custody. It should have come from, well, it should have come from a phone, but they don't have the original piece of data that created this image. They don't have that data. So what happened to it? Where did it come from? Yeah, it's just very interesting to have a photo with no origin. And we're going to say that this is authenticated when we don't have a chain of custody. Anyways, so we found it on the internet. Do you remember what you searched to find it? No, ma'am. Okay, now you put it in your report as the asterisks have it at 2:07. Is that right? Yes. All right. And the time here just said 7 hours ago, right? Yes. How do you arrive at 2:07? Because it's imprinted on that picture. Which one? The one in your left. So this wasn't on the original picture, February 13th, 2:07, right? Right. The original picture says, in fact, I'm going to show you defendant's exhibit A. That's the original picture, right? I believe so. Okay. Thank you. And there's no date or timestamp on the original picture, correct? Yes. Is that correct? Yes, it's correct. So you have no idea who put February 13th, 2:07 on there, do you? No. Just someone on the wide web? Yes. There you have it. No chain of custody. All right. Now, how precise is 7 hours ago? It depends. Do you have any idea? No. All right. And you don't know when this picture was actually posted? No. Now, Libby German posted a photo on Snapchat on February 13th, 2017 at 1:40, correct? Yes. And again at 1:41. Check with my sure. Report. 1:41. Yes, says the witness. Again at 1:43. Yes. And 2:05. Yes. Now, the picture she posted at 1:40, you were able to find in the Snapchat cache or cache. It's cache, but people say cache and get made fun of. So I just did that. He says yes. And snaps, that's a lot of Snapchat cache is just a cache of information that is associated with Snapchat on the phone. Is that right? Yes. Probably not a great way to say it, but kind of a bag of information. Yes. All right. And so the picture that she posted at 1:40 was contained in the Snapchat cache? Yes. And the picture she posted at 1:41, you found it in the Snapchat cache? Yes. And the picture at 1:43 you found in the Snapchat cache? Yes. And the picture she posted at 2:05 you found in the Snapchat cache? Yes. But you didn't find the one at 2:07? Correct. Nor is it on her camera roll. Correct. Could someone please have, or sorry, could someone else, I don't know where I got please, could someone else have posted it from her account from a different device? Could have. See what I'm saying? Could have been an iPad, which I believe she had at home. Could have been, maybe someone else at home had an iPad and could log into Libby's account, perhaps, or a phone even at home that could log into Libby's account. Um, maybe not necessarily. Well, yeah, somebody. I think somebody, not necessarily in the home of the Patties and the Germans, but somebody I think had access to Libby's phone or iPad or cloud or somehow was able to post something to Snapchat that was pretending to be Libby in the process, impersonating her. Okay, and these are the same clothes Abby Williams was wearing in the video recorded on the phone at 2:13 p.m. on the 13th. Yes. So it appears to be the same time and place as February 13th? Yes. But not on her phone. Correct. Now, you said that it was likely uploaded. The still image was likely uploaded to Snapchat, correct? Correct. All right, but in order to be uploaded, it would have to be on her phone. Correct. So then how did it get uploaded? Now, the data. You stay very busy, don't you? Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately. And by unfortunately, there's a lot of crimes. And in investigating those crimes, cell phone data is routinely used. Yes. And it has been for over 20 years routinely used in criminal investigations? Yes. Okay. And the phone, the data that you find obtained in extractions and examinations is used in investigations and trial because it's accurate? Yes. And it's reliable? Yes. And that includes the Apple Health data? Yes. And that includes the data from the Knowledge C database? Yes. Now, you listed some things in, I think, your second report that identify the different categories contained in the Knowledge C database. Yes, those aren't everything. Those aren't all the categories contained in the Knowledge C, right? Right. And there's also an encrypted cache database. I'm not following you. All right. Is there a database or set of files contained in Knowledge C that are entitled encrypted cache? I'm not aware of encrypted cache. Okay, now Cellbrite, you referred to in your direct examination, did I call it the UFED reader, UFED reader? Did you have a better name for it? Universal Forensic Extraction Device. Okay, Universal Forensic Extraction Device. Correct. Correct? Correct. All right. And that's been around since 2007? Yes. And that allows you to get a physical extraction from the phone, correct? No. No. All right. It could. Could. Okay. And it's had that ability since before 2017, right? Depending on the make and model of the phone. Okay. Now, and there are different levels of extractions that you can obtain from a phone, correct? Yes. So there's a logical extraction? Yes. Okay, and that's kind of the over the hood data, if you will. The what if I have my phone and and I'm using it? That's the data that I, as the user, can see on my phone. Correct. And then you can do an advanced logical extraction. Yes. What is that? That's a little bit more than logical. Typically, it's associated with like an iPhone, so it'd be the backup. And you can get a full file extraction, a full file system extraction, right? Yes. And that includes kind of the under the hood data. Yes. Those are the system files and the things like knowledge C. Yes. Okay. And there are other logs. There's a revision B, container management, power log, lots of different kinds of source files and system files that you can see with the full system, the full file system extraction. Yes. And as Apple develops these products, they don't tell you, as digital forensics analysts, what's in there and how to get it. Correct. You guys, as a general field, there, the software engineers, cell phone engineers, all kinds of people who kind of work through and try to figure out what's on there and decipher it. Correct. And so that's why it took people a while to figure out about the Knowledge C database, right? Right. Even though it was there, people didn't really know about it. Right. Until 2006 or 2016. Maybe 2016. Remember the murders happened in 2017, but technology hadn't really caught up to them yet. By the time, it took a while for technology to catch up and they were able to do the extractions. Now, one of the logs that is recorded in kind of the under the hood data is the power off log. I don't understand your question. There's a power off log, right? There's a shutdown log. Okay, so there's also, would you agree with the premise that a lot of data in phones are contained in several different spots on the phone? Yes. Okay, and so there might be the power off log. What did you call it? The shutdown log. Shutdown log. All right. How long does the shutdown log keep information? From what I gather, it's volatile, so every time you would restart the phone and shut it down, it's going to change it. It overwrites the data? Yes. All right. And so when Lieutenant Bunner charged the phone on the 15th and then later powered it down, that wiped out the shutdown log, right? It would reset it. Reset it. But what it did was now we don't have access to when the phone was shut down on the 14th, right? Right. Okay. And so the jury will never have that information. Right. Now you said I'm going to switch gears and talk about. Oh, sorry. She took a break there. She said, now you said, I'm going to switch gears here and talk about SMS messages and iMessages. So, two users of the phone can communicate in different ways via cell phones. Yes. And if one person has an iPhone and person B has an iPhone, they can use what's called iMessaging. Yes. Okay. Can you tell us what iMessaging is? iMessage is something that's proprietary to Apple. It's their encrypted messaging service, so two iPhone users can chat back and forth in an encrypted mode. And people, if let's say user A has an iPhone and user B has an Android, how if I want to send a message between that's communicated via an SMS? Yes. Okay, can you tell us what an SMS message is? A short message service. So, SMS does not need the internet. It utilizes the cellular network to communicate across the network, he says. And so these are delivered differently. Is that fair? Yes. And isn't it true? You said in your direct that during this time, and I believe you were talking about 4:06 p.m. on the 13th. Okay. You there? Yes, ma'am. All right. During this time, the phone continued to receive calls and SMS messages throughout the night. You recall testifying to that? Yes. Okay. But the Libby's iPhone received 0 SMS messages between 4:06 p.m. on the 13th and 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. It received iMessages. But that wasn't my question. My question was between 4:06 p.m. on the 13th and 4:33 a.m. on the 14th, it received 0 SMS messages? You're correct. And SMS messages need the tower to be transmitted, correct? Yes. Okay. At 4:33 a.m. So she may not have been near tower access. If messages were being received but she wasn't getting them, or were being sent but she wasn't getting them, that could mean she just wasn't near a cell tower or her phone wasn't getting it wasn't on, it wasn't activated to a cell, what or to a tower, whatever it might be. Okay. And at 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, 2017, Libby German's cell phone received 15 SMS messages. 15 SMS messages, not I messages. Approximately 15. And you don't know why. So probably likely she connected to a cell tower at this point in time, and all these SMS messages that she didn't get throughout the night go bing, 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 coming in her phone all at once. Right? Makes sense to me. And you don't know why? I do not know why. Okay. Now the phone did get iMessages throughout the night, right? It received some, yes. Some, okay. And if I am, let's say if I'm in my office and I don't have cell service and I'm there for 10 hours and I walk out of the building and suddenly I get service, I get a bunch of my phone starts ding, 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 and all of those messages come through on my phone. Have you ever had that happen? Yes. Or like you go on an airplane and you have to put it, your phone, turn it off or put it in airplane mode, and then you turn it back on and you get all your messages at once. Now, when that happens, the SMS messages that are delivered via the tower, via the cell tower, are timestamped on the time my phone receives them, correct? Yes. So, not the time that they were sent, but the time that your phone receives them. So, they could have been or they could have been sent at 1 in the morning and they weren't or they didn't get received into the phone until and registered into the phone until that 4:33 a.m. But the iMessages are timestamped as of the time they're sent. Yes. So even though the phone is receiving iMessages at 4:06 p.m. on the 13th until 4:33 a.m. on the 14th, that doesn't mean that that phone has tower connection, correct? Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry. Sure. So even though those iMessages are timestamped between 4:06 p.m. on the 13th and 4:33 a.m. on the 14th, that doesn't mean that the phone received them at the time that they're timestamped. Correct. They could be that could be correct. And even though they're timestamped throughout that period, they're still received at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. Yes. Now, First Sergeant Cecil, I think I might have confused you earlier, and that's my fault. We were talking about the encrypted cache. Yes. And you said you did not know about that? Yes. There is a cache encrypted b.db, correct? I'm not familiar with what you're asking, ma'am. Okay, well, do you recall giving a deposition on September 12th of this year? Yes. Right back there in the jury room. Yes. Okay, and I asked you questions. Yes. And you answered those questions. Yes. And we went through a lot of different logs and databases and files saved on Knowledge C. Yes. You recall that. Yes. All right. I'm going to show you your deposition and I don't know where you want to start, but I'm going to definitely point your attention to page 21, lines 18 to 20, and I can give you the pages before that to get context. Okay. When you've had a chance to review that and refresh your recollection, just let me know. Okay. All right. And in your answer, you were telling me about the encrypted cache as it relates to cell tower. Okay, but that's a database that's contained in Knowledge C, right? I don't believe so. All right. But encrypted cache is on the phone? It's a cache that Cellbrite is parsing, but if you read the entire sentence, if I may, sure. The witness says, it says, quote, there's once that's logging, says it's got cell towers. This would be under cache encrypted b.db. I'm just reading something that Cellbrite's parsing as part of my deposition. You were asking me a list of databases that potentially I would have looked at or Cellbrite would have looked at. Okay. And can we agree that encrypted cache B is a database that exists on the phone? Yes. Okay, thank you. And that database contains information. Yes. Sir, in working on this case, you used all the information from Lieutenant Bunner's report, the magnet information you were able to obtain, the gray key, the Cellbrite, all of those extractions. You took all of that information and you prepared a very detailed and color-coded timeline. Which report are you referring to regarding Lieutenant Bunner? Well, whatever one you looked at. Okay, so you're talking about the 2015 report? No, excuse me, 2017 report, the February 15th, 2017 report. Okay, okay. there were 3 reports in, right, 2017, right? Right. But I always want to make sure we're talking about the right one. Sure. And you took all that information and you made a timeline. Yes. And I'm going to show you what I've marked as Defendant's Exhibit P, as in Paul. Is now your timeline was about that big if I printed it out. Do you recall that? Yes, ma'am. All right. And so I distilled it down into something a little bit easier from the February 13th, the first entry, until the end of the February 15th. Yes. And is that a true and accurate portion of the timeline that you created? If this is previously what I looked at that you had given the prosecution, then yes. Okay. And are all the entries on that timeline that you created true and accurate? Yes. And they're reliable? Yes. Anything that we need to correct or change, edit, modify on that? Not that I know of right now, no. Move to admit Exhibit P. No objection, Judge, says Mr. McClelland. Court says, all right, without objection, P is admitted. Sir, I'm going to switch gears again. You talked about whether, in your direct examination, whether the phone would track movement if it were in the car and moving. Do you recall that? Yes. And there, the way the technology works in the cell phone, people are still researching, studying, conducting experiments, trying to figure out what all this means and how it's recorded in the phone. Isn't that fair? I would agree. And you found some things and you weren't sure about them, right? In your examinations, there were some things and you weren't sure about them. Like? Well, steps climbed. Yes. Okay, and so you went and looked at that and you found out that each flight Apple defines as 3 meters or 10 feet. Yes. And then you also did a little research about movement. Yes. And you quoted and you said in your direct that if the phone is in the car and driving, it might record movement if it hits a bump. Yes. The big word there is might, right? Right. We don't know whether it does or doesn't. Correct. But you tried to play it off like it does, sir. You absolutely try to play it off like, yep, it would. It would do it. And the research that you cite says, well, first of all, it's a preliminary research report, correct? Correct. Right. And it says an iPhone sometimes mistakenly interprets a car driving over speed bumps as user steps. You recall that? Yes. Speed bumps. Yes. It doesn't talk about other potholes or anything like that. It specifically says speed bumps. Yes. And it says sometimes. Yes. Which means sometimes it doesn't. Correct. When you did your examination in 2019, one of the things that, and a way that Gray Key is helpful, is that it can recover deleted files. Yes. And in fact, Gray Key did recover some deleted files, correct? Yes. And there were some files on Libby's iPhone that had been deleted? Yes. And you were able to recover those with Gray Key. Some of those, yes. Okay, now you talked about Lieutenant Bunner that he hooked up the phone or connected the phone is probably a better term on February 23rd, 2017 to a network. Is that correct? I know he connected it to a network. I don't know when he connected it. All right. And that's something that, as a digital forensics analyst, you really don't want to do, right? Typically not. Typically, you do not want to connect to a network because it can overwrite data. Okay, because you can if you're trying to get the information from the iCloud, you would get a warrant for that. Mr. McClelland says, Judge, I guess I'm going to object to outside the scope. I'm not sure that I understand the relevance of asking whether or not he needed to get a warrant for search or for information on the iCloud. Ms. O'Shea says, well, I mean, it's relevant because he brought it up and he said you shouldn't do that, and so I'm trying to explore that a bit. Court says, and how do you respond to it being outside the scope? Zauge says, well, he talked about it indirect, and that Sergeant or Lieutenant Bunner, the phone connected to the network, and information was downloaded onto the phone when Bunner did that. Overruled. Wow. I'm sorry, you have to ask your question again, says the witness. I'm just shocked that she overruled that. I know, I get it. Okay, give me one moment. Let me refocus. There are other ways you can get information from iCloud storage other than hooking the phone up to the network. Correct. And as a digital forensics analyst, the first time you plug the phone in, you want to keep going and do all of the extractions and get all of the data you can the first time, right? Yes. Because every time you plug it in, every time you do something else, you're overwriting data and you're losing data. Potentially, yes. And you're also losing data over time, right? Yes. Remember, the crimes happened in 2017. Richard Allen didn't get arrested until years later. What was it, 2021? I want to say? Maybe 2022? What year did he get arrested? I'm losing it. Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. I looked it up. It was 5 years after the crimes. He's arrested in October. So it was more than 5 years after the crimes. He's arrested. So anything and all the data evidence that they had, some things, especially uh, digital forensics, can be lost over time, is what they're saying. So you can actually lose data over time. So the phone is now 5 years old and it's outdated. Much outdated, very outdated. So and the officers keep turning the phone on and off for some reason. All right. Next question is, so when you wait from February until September to October to 2019 to 2024, data's coming off that phone. When it's powered on? Yes. Yes. I mean, you have to be honest there, and it is. Now, would you agree with me that it's sometimes helpful to have a second set of eyes review data? Yes. And in 2019, the FBI requested the full file extraction from the state police. Yes. And you asked Lieutenant Holman if you could provide the data to the FBI. Yes. And sometimes different agencies have different resources. Yes. That's why in 2017 the phone was sent to Customs or Homeland Security. Correct. And so, knowing that sometimes different agencies have different capabilities, knowing that the FBI requested the extraction, what did you do to follow up with them? I did not. So, you didn't follow up with them at all? The FBI. Okay. Now, first, Sergeant Cecil, you also did some extractions on Richard Allen's devices? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And you notice that it didn't even come out in direct. Richard Allen's phones. We haven't even talked about those. And you performed extractions on them. Yes. And there's nothing on any of those devices that ties Richard Allen to Libby. Correct. And there's nothing on those devices that ties Richard Allen to Abby. Correct. There's nothing on those devices that ties Richard Allen to the murder of Abby. Correct. And there's nothing on those devices that ties Richard Allen to the murder of Libby. Correct. I have nothing further. That is a strong way to end your examination there. Mr. McClelland, says the judge. He says, thank you. We have some redirect. Mr. McLeland says the data that is potentially lost when the phone is turned on and turned off, is that only data within the Knowledge C databases? No. Is this, in this case, when you compared your extraction to Lieutenant Bunner's extraction, nothing was lost between those two extractions, is that correct? You'll have to rephrase that. Earlier, you testified that the information you gathered from your extraction matched what Lieutenant Bunner had extracted. Am I saying that correctly? The user content created, user created content matched. So the things that the user did on the phone matched. And the user created content would be photos, videos, health app data, and that kinds of content. Photos, messages, videos, calls. So none of that data was lost. Right. And you know from the data that you did collect that the phone wasn't shut down until sometime after 4:33 a.m. on February 14th. Correct. And you also know that the data that you collected that after 2:32 p.m. on February 13th, the phone doesn't move again until it's powered down. There's no other, let me rephrase that. You know, at 2:32 p.m. the phone stops moving and it registers no other movement at least until after 4:33 a.m. on February 14th. Correct. And how many devices from Richard Allen's house did you analyze? May I refer to my Would referring to your report help refresh your recollection as to how many devices you analyzed that were collected from Richard Allen's house? Yes. And do you have your report in front of you? I do have both of them. And was that report made close in time to your analysis of those devices? Yes. Judge, I would ask permission for the first sergeant to take a look at his report to refresh his recollection. The court says you may. The witness answers approximately 23 devices. 23 devices. And do you know from reviewing your report, let me back up, when you analyzed those devices in your reports, do you note the date those devices were released to the public? You'll have to rephrase that. Sure. When you analyze a device, do you note in your report when that device, say it's an iPhone 6, when those devices are released to the public, meaning that year, what year and sometimes month that they're released to the public? Yes. And do you know, or do, and so when, oh my God, I'm just putting words there that don't exist. And so when you analyze a device, you can say this device came out in October of 2024. Correct. And did you do that with all of Richard Allen's devices? With all of his cell phones. And so were you able to get, well, let me back up. And at some point in the investigation, you became aware that Richard Allen had a cell phone in 2017. Is that correct? Yes. And you were made privy to the identification number on that cell phone? I was told I think it was an MEID. What is an MEID? A mobile equipment identifier. And what is that used for? It's a serial number for mobile devices. Does each mobile device have a different MEID? It can have an MEID or an IMEID. Excuse me, an IMEI. IMEI. So, is there any cell phone that's going to have the same MEID as my cell phone? No. And so it's a unique number to identify a cell phone. Is that fair? Correct. Once you have the MEID and the cell phone that Richard Allen had in 2017, did you compare it to the list of devices that you analyzed from his house? Yes. Out of the devices that you analyzed at the house, did you analyze the phone from 2017 that had that had the number? What was that again? MEID. The MEID number. No. So the phone that he had in 2017 wasn't found in his house and wasn't a phone that you analyzed. Correct. I don't have any other questions, Judge. So the phone that he analyzed, obviously, so it was a different phone. It was not the phone he had in 2017. We know that because you guys looked into him 5 years after the crimes. So he didn't have the same phone. Ms. Auger? Yes. Now we have some recross. Ms. Auger says, First Sergeant Cecil, when did you get these devices of Mr. Allen's to analyze? May I refer to my report? Sure. Looks like I received them on November 8th of 2022. So my math skills aren't the best. 5.5 years after the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German? Yes. People generally don't use their cell phones for objection, Judge. That calls for speculation. Sustained. Now you said after 2:32 p.m. the phone stops moving? Yes. But you don't really know that, right? I only know that the Apple Health data tells me what the Apple Health data tells me. So no more steps taken with the phone in hand. Okay. And the Apple Health data records steps? Yes. And so if the phone is in a car, it may not be reporting movement? Correct. So just because the phone doesn't record steps doesn't mean that the phone's not moving. Correct. Nothing further. The court says, all right, does anybody on the jury have any questions for First Sergeant Cecil? And we do. So let's get to it. There's a lot of questions here. The court reads the first question. How do you determine Mr. Allen had no connection with Abby Williams and Libby German and the homicides from the phone data? Mr. McLellan says, I'm okay with that. I was going to recall him because of what we talked about. Something inaudible. We got another inaudible. Court says, so will you be recalling him back? Mr. McLellan says, well, we may not have to now. I'm okay with that. Court says, any objection? Nope, says Ms. Auger. Mr. McLellan says, well, we've got to talk about something. If we're going to go down this road and the defense is going to open the door to this, there is information on one of the devices, like he searched. There was a Google search about Abby Williams and Libby German and how to best kidnap someone, all these different things. The court says, oh. And Mr. McLellan says, and so if we're going to open this door about there's no objection, I just want to make you aware of it. I have no idea what this is talking about. Ms. Auger says, well, and that's way after. So it must have been after the homicides, he was searching things on his phone about Abby and Libby. Mr. McLellan says, Ms. Auger says, okay. Mr. McLellan says, I just have concerns. We can talk about the sketches and opening the door. I'm going to ask to bring it up, I guess, is my opinion. So, anyways, court says, next question is on the first report on 2/13/17 at 2:05 p.m. the photo depicting Monenhigh Bridge with no one depicted in the still image. Did you ever locate or print this photo? Ms. Auger says, I'm fine with that. Mr. McLellan says, I thought that was a photo of the bridge with no one on it. Ms. Auger says, you have it. Mr. McLellan says, I thought we did it in one. The court says, was one of the was one that one of the girls took? That's what I thought, says Mr. McLellan. Ms. Auger says, was what? Weird, says the court. It's a weird. What's it look like? Court says, it looked like it was like filtered. Ms. Auger says, kind of black and white? Yeah, black and white, that one. Or sepia, or court says, yeah. Is that the photo that the court that was Mr. McLellan? The court cuts him off and says, I don't know. Mr. McLellan says, can you read that again? And that's the inaudible photo, says Ms. Auger. So hard to follow. The court says 2/14/17/205, the photo depicting the Monenhigh Bridge with no one depicted on the bridge. Did you ever locate or print this photo? Mr. McClellan says, on her cell phone? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the question. The court says, okay. What are all the blank spaces under the events section on the timeline in your first report? Mr. McClellan says, that's a good one. I'm okay with that. Court says, how does the phone receive iMessages, FaceTime calls, text, telephone calls, but no SMS messages after 4:06 p.m. and before 4:33 a.m. on 2/14 without a signal via cell tower or Wi-Fi connection? Mr. McClellan says, I'm good with that. Court says, have you ever checked to see if AT&T had any cell tower issues between 4:06 p.m. February 13th and 4:33 a.m. February 14th? I'm okay with that question, says McClelland. I guess Ms. Auger doesn't have the ability to object or say anything because it's just Judge Gall and Nick McClelland right now having a combo here. Uh, I'm sure she did, but it just doesn't seem that way in the transcript because it's like Nick's like, yeah, I'm fine with it. And then the judge just moves right on to the next question. Are you aware if Snapchat saves photos not uploaded to your story? Mr. McClelland says, I'm okay with that. Do the pictures that get sent via Snapchat get saved anywhere? I'm okay with that. Are you having any objection to these? Ms. Auger says, no. Court says, okay. Ms. Auger says, you know me. The court says, no, I don't. That's why I'm asking. Court says, okay, sorry. The court says, can iMessages be sent via cellular service? Mr. McClelland says, I'm fine with that. Court says, how much data would be lost if the phone has been off and it stores a month of records? For example, if the phone is shut off 2:15 after method 1, then on off February 21st, then in 2019, that doesn't make sense. I don't know what I'm saying. That was, I think, an aside from the judge. And Mr. McLean says, I'm okay with the question, but I don't think I even understand it. Ms. Auger says, yeah. I think what they're asking is how much data could you lose? I don't think they understand that when you shut the phone off, it preserves the data. So you're not losing data when the phone's off, is what I think is the answer to their question, because I think they're kind of confused that if the phone's off, they don't realize that they could still lose data. Anyways, um, or that they could not. They can't lose data unless you turn it on. Mr. McClellan says, um, but I'm okay if you ask it that way and see what he says. The court says, well, I'm just going to leave off the for example. Mr. McClellan says, that's fine. The court says, okay. Mr. McClellan says, that's fine. Ms. Auger says, leave off what? The court says, leave off the for example, all of that. That doesn't make okay, says Ms. Auger. So the question then is just how much data would be lost if the phone has been off and it stores a month of records? Okay, still kind of a confusing question, but whatever. She's going to leave off the other part. The next question. The question is how much data would be lost if the phone's been off and it stores a month of records? Ms. Auger says, okay. Mr. McClellan says, yep. And what was the for example, says Ms. Auger. Court says, for example, the phone is shut off February 15th after method 1. I don't know what that means. Mr. McClellan says, then on off on 221. Court says, then on off 221 and then to 2019. Yeah, okay. Court says, okay, is the cumulative data of a month in terms of total days or consecutive 30 days from last power on and off? That's a good question. Good question. Court says, did method 1 extraction garnish knowledge seed data even though at the time the knowledge didn't, there was no end to it, there's no finish, it says. Did the method 1 extraction garnish knowledge seed data even though at the time the knowledge didn't? Mr. McGlynn says, I'm okay with the first half, just take off the even though. It's an incomplete. though, I suppose. Court says it's just an incomplete thought. Ms. Auger says, even though, oh, yes, the court says, so just keep it out? Because I think it's completed without, assuming that's what it means, but it's kind of confusing. Can Snapchat videos and photos be deleted in Knowledge Seed data without app usage? Okay, says Ms. Auger. I'm okay with it, says Mr. McClelland. Court says, could a picture not be added to the Snap cache based on battery life? Okay with that. Yeah. Could Snap cache pictures not exist depending on the way that it was posed? Story versus. I'm okay with that. Okay. How long does the iPhone 6s need to register floors climbed? Mr. McClelland says, how long does the app? The court says, how long does the iPhone 6s need to register floors climbed? I'm okay with the question, but I don't understand it. Court says, I don't either. Ms. Auger says, I don't know. So if we don't understand it, should it not be asked? Probably, says McClelland. Okay, so Mr. McClelland says, probably correct, I mean. The court says, does the data from the iPhone 6s tell us a start and end time for the 2 floors climbed? Yeah, says Ms. Auger. Mr. McClelland says it does, but that's an okay question. Court says it does, but what? It does. That's it. I'm okay with the question. Oh, okay. Now, 2. Court says, what happened to Health data, the Apple Health app data between 2/18/48 and 2/25/22? Is there a gap there? Ms. Auger says it says that when it started and when it stopped, and then it started again. Is that In which report is that? Says the court. In case he asks me, which report would that be? 2. Report 2? Says the court. Ms. Auger says, well, it's in both of them. Mr. McClelland says it's in both of them. Court says both of them. Okay, so we would know, or he would know. Ms. Auger says, yeah. Court says, okay. So what happened to the Apple Health app data between 2/18/48 and 2/25/22? Ms. Auger says, yeah, I'm okay with it. Okay, lots of questions. Sidebar conference concluded. So that was all, no jury, obviously. Now we're in front of the jury doing answering the questions with the witness. So the judge asks the questions in front of the jury now and says, Sergeant, in your first report, the photo depicting the Monon High Bridge with no one depicted in the still image at 2:13:17 at 2:05 p.m. She says, let you get there. He says, what was the time again, Your Honor? 2:05 p.m., February 13th, 2017. Yes. Okay, so the photo depicting the Monon High Bridge with no one depicted in the still image. So it's the same image of when Libby was on the bridge, but just no Libby. I'm sorry, no Abby this time. No Abby in the pink sweatshirt or pink shirt and gray sweatshirt. It's basically the same view of the Monon High Bridge. So no one depicted, she says, so the photo depicting the Monon High Bridge with no one depicted in the still image, did you ever locate or print this photo? I did not. Any follow-up, Mr. McClelland? No, Your Honor. Ms. Auger? No. And in the first report, what are all the blank spaces under the event section on the timeline in your first report? Those blank sections have to do with the battery, so I'm keeping track of the battery, trying to segregate it from the other things that's going on, so that's why they're empty fields. I just kind of colored them in. Any follow-up, Mr. McClelland? Yes. First, Sergeant Cecil, so in those gray spots, are you using them to denote, I guess, separate the battery life usage from the other information? Yes. So you're not covering up information you found? Correct. Okay, nothing else, Judge. Ms. Auger? Your Honor, can I ask an omitted question about the first question? Sure. So this is about the previous juror question. Sergeant Cecil, did I hear you right that you testified you did not see the picture posted at 2:05? No, I saw it. I didn't print it. Okay, I apologize. Thank you. You're welcome. Next question. Sergeant, how does the phone receive iMessages, FaceTime calls, and telephone calls, but no SMS messages after 4:06 p.m. on February 13th and before 4:33 a.m. on February 14th without a signal via cell tower or Wi-Fi connection? I don't have an answer. Okay, any follow-up? No, Your Honor. No. Did you ever check to see if AT&T had any cell tower issues between 4:06 p.m. on February 13th and 4:33 a.m. on February 14th? No. Mr. McClelland? No questions, Judge. Thank you. Ms. Auger? Yes. That's not something you would have done. Is that right? Correct, ma'am. So that would be, did you ever check to see if AT&T had any cell tower issues between those hours? And he said or she asked, it's not something you would do. You, the person who pulls the data from Libby's phone, that's not something you would do to see if there were cell tower issues, right? That's like the lead investigator's job to do, or to at least check on that, make sure that that wasn't overseen. He says, correct, ma'am. And that's something you would have other teams of investigators look at. Correct. Thank you. Next, your question. Are you aware if Snapchat saves photos not updated to the story? He says they don't. Mr. McLeland? No questions, Judge. Ms. Auger? Yes. But you would expect a photo that was uploaded to Snapchat to be saved on the phone? Correct. Anything else? No, thank you. Do the pictures then get sent via Snapchat, not on a story, but to a friend? Do those get saved anywhere? I don't remember her reading this question. He says, that I don't know. Okay, Mr. McLeland. He does have some follow-up. So he says, if the photos, I guess, I'm trying to get this clear in my head first, for Sergeant. If the photos are uploaded to the story, do you know, are they saved to the phone? That I don't know. As opposed if they're sent to a friend via the other Snapchat avenue, not the story, do you know if those are saved to the phone? They could be cache, but I'm speculating here. Okay, I don't have any other questions, Judge. Ms. Auger? Well, some photos are saved in the Snapchat cache, correct? Correct. Because at least 3 from February 13th were saved in that same cache. Correct. Nothing further. So the other 3 photos that Libby took and posted, saved. This last one, not saved there. Can iMessages be sent via cellular service? Yes. Mr. McLeland? No questions, Judge. Ms. Auger? Yes. Well, they're sent through the cell towers. They're time stamped as of the time that they're sent and not the time that they're received. They're converted into an SMS if it's actually going through a tower versus utilizing the internet, it will be an SMS. Okay, thank you. Next question. How much data would be lost if the phone had been off and it stores a month of records? I don't have an answer. I don't know. Mr. McLeland says, or sorry, the court says, Mr. McLeland? Mr. McLeland says, no questions, Judge. Ms. Auger? No questions. Is the cumulative data of a month in terms of total days or consecutive days, consecutive 30 days from the last power on or off? I don't know, and I don't understand the question either. Mr. McLeland, no questions. Judge, thank you. Ms. Auger, no questions. Did the method 2 extraction garnish knowledge C data? No. Mr. McLeland, no questions. Ms. Auger, no questions. Could Snapchat videos or photos be deleted in knowledge C data with app usage? He says, I'm trying to understand the question. Could you repeat that again? Could Snapchat videos or photos be deleted in knowledge C data with app usage? I think the question is, can a user delete knowledge C data? And the answer, I believe, is no, for the most part, unless you're deleting like a photo or something, like doing things that normally you could do, but you can't like manipulate the knowledge C data, I think is the question, but I'm not sure. Anything else, Mr. McLeland? No, Judge. Ms. Auger has a question. Snapchat photos are saved in the Snapchat cache? Correct. Not in Knowledge C. Correct. Nothing further. Next question. Could a picture not be added to the Snap cache based on battery life? And the witness says, I don't believe battery life would cause a problem, Your Honor. Any follow-up? Mr. McLeland says, is it possible for a Snapchat picture to not be added to the Snapchat cache? Or is it possible for a picture not to be saved in Snapchat cache? I don't know. So you don't know yet. We're we're not going to say that this is weird at all. Okay. You don't know how how this particular photo got there or on Snapchat. It's not on the phone, not in the Snapchat cache, but we're just going to go with it and be like, yeah, Libby did it. Absolutely. Libby posted it. Okay, sure. No foul play to see here or suspicion, whatever. Follow-up question is from Ms. Auger here. The Snapchat cache saves pictures because of the inner workings of the phone and not because of any user activity? It could be both. Thank you, nothing further. Next question. Could Snap cache pictures not exist depending on the way it was posted? I don't know. Okay, Mr. McLeland. First Sergeant, there are some pictures from Snapchat that you were able to recover, correct? Correct. And there's at least one picture you were not able to recover. Correct. And on your timeline, you have an asterisk by that. That was the 1407 picture. Correct. Do you have any explanation why you were able to get some of the pictures, but the one at 1407 you were not able to collect? I don't have an answer. He says not 407, 207. 1407, which is 207. That was a bad question, sorry. So again, do you have any explanation of why why you were not able to collect the picture that was uploaded to Snapchat at 2:07? No, don't have an answer. I don't have any other questions, Judge. Ms. Auger? Could it be that Libby's Snapchat account was accessed from a different device? Could be. From a different user, perhaps? Nothing further. Does the data from the iPhone tell us a start and end time for the 2 floors climbed? No, it falls within the other movement that's going on at that time. Mr. McLeland? In your report, First Sergeant, I want to draw your attention to the first report, page 8. Yes. And the last line there, where it says flights climbed 2 floors, 213, 1431. When you say it falls within the other data, what do you mean? So what I'm getting at is these 2 floors, whether they're climbed up or down, I don't know. They're just an elevation change, and it falls in line between the 225 and the 2:32 p.m. Falls in line with that activity happening. So on February 13th of 2017, there were 50.64 meters traveled from 2:25 to 2:32 p.m. Is that correct? Correct. And those two floors or two flights were climbed during the movement of those 50.64 meters? Correct. And that's what you mean within that time. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, no further questions. Ms. Auger? Nothing. What happened to the Apple Health app data between 2:18 and 2:25? The phone was not detecting any movement at that time. Any follow up, Mr. McLeland? So, again, First Sergeant, draw your attention to page 8, the gap 213 at 2:18 and on February 13th and 2:25. Your testimony is that there's not health app data missing. The phone was just not moving at that time. Correct. No other questions, Judge. Ms. Auger? No, thank you. How did you determine Mr. Allen had no connection with Abby Williams and Libby Derman and to the homicides from the phone data? Which phone data, Your Honor? I'm assuming it's the phone data that was asked by Ms. Auger. Court says, I think you were asking about his devices. Ms. Auger says, devices. Yeah, his devices. From his devices, Richard Allen's devices. When I went through, I didn't find any information regarding like Libby and Abby, contact information, no interaction or communication about them. I mean, there might have been some internet history where regarding like what he was going on with what was going on with the news, but there was no direct communication or that Mr. Allen even knew the victims. Mr. McLeland, you did locate internet search history regarding Abby and Libby? Yes. I don't have any other questions. Ms. Auger? It was after the homicides? Correct. And you don't know who actually performed that search? Correct. Nothing further. All right. Thank you, Sergeant Cecil. You may step down. Thank you, Your Honor. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the day. While you go on about your business now, the rest of the afternoon and into the evening, please remember what I've told you repeatedly. You're going to be able to repeat all of this back to me in a couple of days. Please don't talk about the case amongst yourselves since you will be in the company of the bailiffs. Have a safe and peaceful evening, and we will see you all tomorrow morning. Gentlemen. All rise. The jury leaves at 4:56 p.m. The court says, all right, is there anything we need to do outside the presence of the jury? No, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. Thank you, says McLeland and Baldwin. The court says, okay, and those in the audience, if you'll just wait a minute so we can get the jury out towards their vans. Jody, you can go off the record. And we go off the record. That'll be the conclusion of Sergeant Christopher Cecil's testimony. Up next, we have Kathy Shank and Dan Doolin. So I believe, well, we know Kathy Shank is the one who found the tip, the tip that was misfiled, misplaced from 5 years ago that led them back to Richard Allen. She's the one that leads them back to Richard Allen with her tip that she finds, which was never exactly explained, but that's what they've told us repeatedly. So Kathy Shank is next, and then I believe Dan Doolin is the first law enforcement interview with Richard Allen. I think. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure, but I can't remember. I think it was Doolin and Holman are the two that do the interview. So there were two interviews. The first one, and then, well, there was the one back in 2017, um, and then there was additional ones that took place later in 2019 or in 2022. So I'm sure that we will get to that in more detail during as the testimony comes out. So thank you guys. This was a longer one, but I kind of wanted to give you the longer one since I skipped 2 days for you. So hopefully you enjoyed it. And plus, I wanted to get through this witness entirely instead of cutting him off in the middle. So there you have it. That is First Sergeant Christopher Cecil. And we will continue tomorrow with Kathy Shank and Dan Doolin, Captain Dan Doolin. So I'll see you guys then. Please don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Make sure you're subscribed and all that good stuff. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye now.